So I have been in the financial industry for about, I would say, 10 years. And one of the first conversations I used to have with researchers is we meet somewhere and they say, what do you do? I say, I work with a financial institution. And they say, can we have your data? And I say, no, we're a financial institution. We don't give data because it's private, it's regulated, and so forth. So I'm sure you're all aware about all of the reasons why financial institutions cannot share their data. There are regulations by the government because they don't want the data to influence the behavior of the markets. And the second reason is, of course, privacy of the individuals. So one thing we did at TD Ameritrade. Great, thanks. So to address this problem, at TD Ameritrade, we created this environment on Amazon Cloud, and we took a huge amount of data, basically the transactions of all of our clients, all the trades. We have about like 400,000 trades a day. We made those data available to researchers from a number of universities. And although it was anonymized data, of course, we were aware of all kinds of issues involved with de-identification. We just to play around with the data, we looked at examples where there are some zip codes where if you knew the zip code, the age of the person and their gender, you'd have 1 in 3 chances of identifying the person. So de-identification was one of the biggest challenges that we had. And so what we did, of course, we just removed those zip codes. We looked at any zip code that had less than a few thousand people. We just did not include them in the data set. Still, the odds of identifying a person were still about 1 in 30 or something, which is not negligible. Now, I don't know if there is a way around that, but no matter what we do with anonymization, there's always ways to de-identify. So there is a huge opportunity in finding solutions to that problem, especially that financial institutions today, they are desperate to have their data analyzed. And typically what we do is we use a number of, well, I'm not there anymore, but we used to use a number of services where we would ship our data to a third party. They would do all kinds of predictive analytics, and then they would send the results to us. Now, I mean, as you know, this process is full of vulnerabilities in the sense that the data is sent somewhere in the cloud. We trust in SSL, but then once it gets into the servers of the third-party company, then anyone within the company who has access to these databases can get into the data. So there is huge opportunity in finding a better way, because financial institutions are reluctant to do this, but they have to. And if there are solutions where they can do it in a safer way, I think that will increase the use of data tremendously. So that's the opportunity of doing that. Another opportunity, which I think is huge, it comes in the counterparty risk. So for those who are not familiar with counterparty risk, is financial institutions, they have huge assets that sit on their balance sheet. And every night, they loan those assets, the cash or the securities, to third parties because why not? Otherwise, they give up the opportunity to make money. And financial institutions always need to borrow money overnight because they're not always, they don't always have all the cash or all the securities they need to fulfill the needs of their clients. So there is huge movement, there is huge banking system that operates that way. Now, when, let's say I'm Fidelity, I want to loan cash to Bear Stearns overnight, I need collateral. But in order to do that, I have to qualify Bear Stearns to see how safe they are. And I have to qualify their collateral, how safe they are. Now, Bear Stearns could be the safest company in the world, but I know once I give them that cash, they're not going to sit on it. They'll give it to somebody else. Then they could be trustworthy, but is somebody else trustworthy also? So there is this cascade of trust that has to go through the whole system. Now, the solution to address that is to make the data available. So when I loan money to Bear Stearns, I need to know how far does their chain go and how trustworthy the system is. Of course, nobody wants to make those data available for all kinds of reasons. Even if they wanted to, it's a lot of data. And I remember after 9/11, I mean, after the 2008 financial crisis, the OFR, the Office of Financial Research, came to us and asked for data. They said, we don't have the data to address the problem. And we said, sure, we give you data. So we gave them data, and the next day they called us and they said, what do you expect us to do with this? We gave them like terabytes of data. So it's a huge amount of data that needs to be processed. And
the transaction there.
Yes.
So where this money possibly is going to end up?
Yes, but that's only from one company's point of view. So if you were to draw a network map, basically it will be our company, and you will see spokes going to all of the other companies. But then we don't know how far the network goes. We try to play all kinds of guessing games and doing some kind of analytics of data to try to guess based on a natural flow of things, statistically how deep the network should go. But of course, that does not replace the real thing. Now, everybody wants to do it. Everybody wants to share the data because everybody will feel safer if there was a better environment, if they could control risk in a better way. But in order to do that, they have to do it in a secure way. So I see that as one of the biggest opportunities for the financial system where you can share data at a macro level without compromising the security or the privacy of any particular financial institution or any particular individual. That's from the positive opportunity. Then the negative opportunity is, I'm sure, I mean, you guys are all security experts, and you know that hackers, basically, they can get into any system they want to because corporations have so many holes in their security systems, no matter how much they secure the perimeter. The unique thing about the financial industry is hackers make a lot of money when they get into a financial institution. If they hack into targets or whatever, maybe they get some credit cards or they can blackmail targets. But if they hack into a financial institution, they can actually transfer money, they can place trades, they can actually make a lot of money. I have no idea to what extent this is happening. I'll be really, really surprised if it didn't happen. And lots of these hackers are smart enough to stay under the radar. So there is a lot of hacking going on. They're profiting tremendously from that. So the cost to the financial industry is tremendous. That's another area where, of course, security can make a big difference. The nasty one that's happening nowadays is all the blackmailing. Hackers that get into financial institution, and of course they blackmail the institution. They say, if you don't give us, I don't know, X millions of dollars, we'll go public with this. I don't have any official data. I know it happens. I don't know which institutions pay up, which don't. I would guess a lot of them end up paying up because the cost is huge. So I can stop here and take any questions since I think I'm over my time. Yeah.
So this counter security.
Counterparty risk.
So can it be modeled as there is a graph?
Yeah.
Basically, is the connection between the companies, and each node knows who the neighbors are.
Yes.
And then you want to somehow securely discover that if I take this trade this way, that I give this money this way, is it going towards a path of
Yeah.
higher level or trust or lower level of trust or something like that? Is that the way?
Yes, absolutely. So imagine you have that network, and then you can use some method like a percolation theory. You say, okay, let's say this node failed, Bear Stearns failed. Okay, how does that failure propagate through the network? So Bear Stearns owes money to J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan owes money to Goldman, and so forth. So that's.
But you don't know the structure.
You don't, and I mean there are a number of research papers that came up using data sets that were made public by Italy, Israel, and a number of other countries, but they're very limited. But there is huge opportunity if the rest of the financial industry made those available, in a secure way, of course. Yeah.
Actually, a very related problem at the level of computer science in the same networking question, which is about money laundering.
Yeah.
Money laundering, you also are looking for patterns in this network to see where the money is going.
Absolutely.
That's something that they also were trying to have a secure way of
Yeah.
James Bond now with this thingy. But it's not on the screen. I guess you trust me to control that? Oh.
Do you have it on duplicate or snap?
Are you showing my screen? Is that what's going on? While you're helping me with the machine. So as Rosario mentioned, I work with no agency and predominantly in the past few years with the National Ice Center. So what they do, they produce ice charts, and as soon as we'll have this thing on the screen, I'll show you what data they use, what satellites they use, and I have no ideas about what security they're using, so that would be left up to you. All right. Okay, so I'll start, that's the title. I'll start with the pretty pictures, so that's how different type of ice looks like. That's an aerial photography. And you may not be aware, there are many different types of ice, and it all has to be categorized and charted. So there are multi-year ice, and that's a very, very easy to chart because it's more or less in the same place all the time. There's a first year ice that's much more difficult to detect, and then that's on the upper right. And then the rest of it is extremely difficult stuff. Gray and white, pancake, nihilus, and floats and icebergs. So that's how it looks like from a satellite imagery. Some of them are prettier than the other, but this is all extremely difficult to chart. So these are the hard to do cases because this swirly thingy very easily confused with the cloud, and the leads are, which you see on the lower left, on the lower right, depending how you look on there. It's difficult to detect because it's a mixture of water and ice, and it's very much looking like a cloud shadows. So these are the, just so you know, that they're difficult cases. There are big communities. So this is one of the Cryosphere Watch page. So they posting, a lot of products and the data for download, and also all sorts of news on what's going on in the polar regions. This is a family of satellites that are used. So it's a very busy slide. I did not produce it. I copied it. It may not be up to date. One that I definitely see missing is the new Japanese geostationary satellite named Himawari. For those who speak Japanese, Himawari is sunflower, I guess. And the thing that you need to sort of know about these, because there are many charts with the satellites, there are two different types. One is the polar orbiter, so it goes and it crosses the poles, and these are the closer orbits, and they are marked there in red. And then there's a geostationary, it rotates together with the Earth, so it's constantly looking at the same portion of Earth, and it doesn't see it from the other side. So we have GOES, that's a US geostationary platform. That's obviously looking on our side. Then there is new Japanese satellite, as I mentioned. There is, where is it? Is it, oh God, European Severi satellite, that's a Severi instrument on the EUMETSAT platform that's also looking at the, mostly Africa, actually. They want to look at the Europe, but they have to stay at the, at the orbit that looks predominantly at the Africa. All right, so these are different types of products. So there are many types of satellites, as I mentioned, and there are many different products that they derive. So this is, Ken, do I have a thingy to point? I guess maybe that works. What do I press? I don't know. Do I press something? Whatever. It probably will take me longer to figure out. In blue, conveniently in blue, this is new, fairly new polar orbiter. It's a US polar orbiter, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that data very briefly. And the GOES-R ABI, it's upcoming. It would be launched in the spring. I'm computer illiterate. I probably can figure it out, but I can't simultaneously think what I'm going to say, look at the slides, and control the multiple hardware devices. So the different types, there are imagers and there are microwave instruments. So as I said, the difficulties is the shadows are confused with the leads and all sorts of things for the imagery. Microwave doesn't see clouds. Woo-hoo. So microwave is a better instrument in terms of distinguishing the ice from clouds than the visible. And there's also polar night, where visibles are just useless, so they only rely solely on the microwave. And since I just mentioned that the microwave is a better instrument, it doesn't see clouds, and it also doesn't depend on light, so it works at night, and it works during the polar night condition. So why do we have to have a visible? Why can't we just rely on the microwave? Microwave is a much coarser resolution. So the best microwave instruments are 20 kilometer and the best imagers are 10 meters. Well, 10 meters are not that often, so the overpasses are more rare, but a standard imager is half a kilometer, 250 meters. So it's a much, much finer resolution. So for the ice flows and for the leads, for the finer details in the ice, you don't want to use a microwave. So that's with respect to so here is our mini satellites. I'll show you how the data look like for just one instrument. So it's not just one satellite, it's one instrument on one of the satellites. Usually satellite carries more than one instrument because satellites are expensive, so if they're launched, they may as well carry a few things. So there's a raw data file. Now you've seen the whole presentation, I may as well end. There's a raw data file that's called SDR. So those are smaller size. Those are archived and never touched. So there's no modification to those. And there are EDR. These are environmental data record. There are reprocessing done on the environmental data record because there are better algorithms, there are better calibrations, there are better this, there are better that, and better the other. So they've been reprocessed. The raw data record is archived and never touched. So that's the smallest amount. And then it goes as a pyramid. On the raw data, there are many different products or retrievals that are done. So these are the basics for the raw data. Each 86-second granule is what collected, packetized, and shipped to the ground, on the direct broadcast. And then it gets the next 86 granule, and so on and so forth. So it has the geolocation files. It has a higher resolution, there's I-bands. It has a coarser resolution. It has a unique day-night band. And so overall, these 42 files total 2 gigs for each 86 seconds for just one instrument, for just one of those satellites that you've seen. So the amount of data that's grind to produce the ice charts is enormous. This is a standard format, so it usually has a file type, the satellite identifier, the date, the UTC, the orbit, the data was created, and so on and so forth. So these are just the formats. This is the difference between these SDRs and the EDRs. I'm not going to go into details. I just threw it in to show you what exists. These are broken down in the file size per type. So the geolocation files are smaller. The actual data is larger. So these are the file sizes. There's different websites from where this data is available. This data is public. It's the environmental data that is available. You don't need to have any credentials to download from most of these. So these are the type of products. So different agencies from all over the world contributing. They have their own charting groups. So it's Canadians, U.S. National Ice Center, and then a whole bunch of North countries. Obviously, that's why they're worried about ice, because they're out there and it matters to them more than to the others. National Ice Center, NIC, is the one I'm working very closely with. This is the system that NIC is using. So with the modern world and with all the algorithms that we have and the apps that you have on your phones and everywhere, they are charting by hands. There are analysts that are sitting in front of the screens. They come to duty every morning. They're getting assigned one of these regions. This is the chart for the Arctic, and there's a similar one. So they have a region divided. They get assignment in the morning which region they're charting. They have an access, so this is one of the systems they have. So they can collect which particular granule they will choose, because one will have more clouds than the others. They can't look at all of them. They will selectively look at some, and they will bring portion of previous day chart for the multi-year ice that they trust. So they're only going to do certain regions. So that's how they're drawing. And they're producing, after all, this AG. I don't have a thingy to point, but you see the AG. AG has the symbols. So 8 to 9 is the solid ice, and then it goes down to the fractions. And they finally output, so they have this menu where they're selecting the ice concentration, so they drop it on the egg. Again, I'm not going into details how it's all going to look like, but they're saving it in shape files. So one of the shapes you see drawn here, so they will outline, and this is a pancake ice, so they will put a particular label for the ice concentration and the marker what type of ice that is, save it, the daily products available at NIC every day by 1 p.m. So that's how it looks like. So that's what they produce every day. It's the shapefile, and it has all these eggs with the symbols, and that's what is being published, and that's what's being used. So different agencies producing different egg-looking charts. So this one is from Alaska Desk. They also have their analysts that are sitting and drawing, but it's slightly different symbolic system. So you have to be also aware that different agencies are drawing it in a different form. There's no standardized format for the ice charting. Users. So these are just a standard, users that would be interested in the ice. It's the weather prediction, obviously, transportation. They need to know where to send ships, and less obvious hydrological modeling. A whole bunch of modelers are using this data, and obviously climate monitoring and analysis, because there's a lot of ice there. It's melting. Manhattan is an island. That might be a problem. So these are the charts for the ship navigation.